Hail cheaters, and welcome to the Always Cheating FPL podcast. My name is Brandon. Josh is away on vacation, but we took this opportunity to find a very special guest, and I'm here to welcome Pat. Pat, you are here representing the Wolves Nation. Also, this is the first time ever on Always Cheating in which two people who reside in Canada are podcasting. So, Pat, all the way from British Columbia, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, I think it qualifies technically as CanCon, so we could probably get some funding from the government. We should write Ottawa, just drop the Patreon and just have me on every so often to talk about Junior Hoylett, and we can just get that sweet Ottawa money. Yeah,
there you go. You know, you walk by a McDonald's in Canada and there is a maple leaf and the golden arches. Pride and culture is a very important thing in this country, so we will certainly respect that. I wonder how your pride and culture with the Wolverhampton Wanderers is feeling after today's misery against Chelsea.
Oh, that was so
yeah.
Fun.
Was it cool?
It was so fun. Well, no. So the thing is that I being on the West Coast, you have to wake up very early to catch all the matches. And I did my homework since I'm going to be on the podcast. I don't want to sound more ignorant than I already am. But the first 45 minutes were encouraging. They had swagger. They had confidence. Chelsea's defense was a shambles.
Yeah.
They were just three stooges just bumping into each other. Gaza was on there looking at his little screen the entire time, just geeking out about his tech. And I thought it was, I was encouraged afterwards. And then the floodgates opened because Wolves just, they fell apart. Their defense was just non-functional. It was a sight to behold. And I think that there was that competition that was there during the game of who could be the worst goalkeeper in the Prem. Is it Sa or is it Robert Sanchez? And they were just going beat for beat with each other, howlers and just, oh man,
kind of
it was
a rap battle in a way.
Oh yeah, but like a reverse rap battle. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe they were inspired by Ray Gun at the recent Olympics breaking competition, and that was sort of like what they were going for. I was telling you, Pat, before the pod started, that Ramsdale with every a goal that Wolves conceded, it was just like a cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching on his end because Sa's days are numbered. And it's kind of surprising to me because in seasons past, I always thought that Sa was up there among the better shot stoppers in the league. But man, being a goalkeeper it's really hard to hold that form. You've got to be elite like Alisson. I mean, you played in goal.
Yeah. I mean, but Ramsdale isn't Portuguese enough to make it. But he the thing with Sa is that he'll have one just insane, because in the game he had one on I believe it was Madueke that had a shot, and he had this just full extension save, really beautiful. And then he figures, okay, I did my one cool thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have to make up for it by just doing four really bad things. Right. Okay. And I think that it kind of creates that cognitive bias where you see him do this incredible thing. He's got a fantastic beard. He's got good composure. And then, so you kind of get that cloud over you thinking, oh, this guy's an actual functional goalkeeper. And then his brain just shuts off. But yeah, Sanchez, they've signed Chelsea has what, a dozen goalies or something right now. So it's almost they're competing.
How many wingers versus goalies? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like a bit of how long is Robert Sanchez going to be between the posts for him? I think he's going to be there the whole season. That's just how wacky Chelsea is and how unpredictable Chelsea is. But I mean, honestly,
Are you a Gary? I want to ask you though, Pat. Are you a Gary O'Neill guy? Because Gary O'Neill, I feel like he divides opinion, and that he just seems like the likable guy, the likable manager, and you better be getting results. Look at Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe's kind of like a successful Gary O'Neill, but the spot that Gary O'Neill is in right now, where Wolves are suddenly competing with Everton for biggest joke to start the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, it also helps that Eddie Howe has his manservant and is like a walking
A
GNC, but
valet, yeah.
yeah, but he's like a walking GNC, but he's like 5'1" maybe. But there's, I like Gary O'Neill as a manager. I think he's like a sound manager. I think that when he came in with Wolves, there's a lot of encouraging elements of him that really clicked. The offense flows a lot better. And I mean, I think that he's doing the best that he can. I mean, it's the thing with Wolves is they're limited. I mean, Fosun International is not necessarily being too generous with the transfer fees. So, although if you look at the Wikipedia page for Wolves right now, under owner, it says Nodi Madueke, which I thought was very nice, and I hope it never changes. But yeah, I think he's dealing with a really he's doing the best that he possibly can.
Yeah, I look at like the starting lineup against Chelsea, and there are like a lot of players here that I like, from Cunha to Gomez to Hwang to Aiden Nuri. I mean, Doherty on his day, perhaps. The one guy who sticks out here is Mario Lemina, and it's sort of like he's the Forrest Gump of teams that get relegated. It's like, look back at the story of the team that got relegated. What binds them all together? Oh, Mario Lemina probably went through their squad.
Yeah, and I have a feeling, Wolves are going to finish like 23rd, 24th this year, something like that.
Great.
Yeah,
they're at the bottom of the pyramid. They're
going to be in the middle tier of the championship this year. But yeah, no, that was something where I don't have like passion about like any team. I root for teams that lose all the time. I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Like I could find the silver lining of humor and all this
Fulham
sort of
connection
stuff
with the Jaguars. Shahid Khan is our boy.
Yeah, our boy Tony Khan. AEW All In. Sunday,
what else can he do? It's incredible.
Oh, he look. Have you seen Tony Khan now? It's amazing.
I haven't seen a picture of him in a while. Is he also on the GNC?
So no. Oh, no. He's on something else because he's working for the Jags. He's working for Fulham, and he's running a professional wrestling organization. Sure. And if you see him like 3 years ago, he looks like your typical like East Williamsburg hipster that has to go do something formal. And now his hair looks like Nick Nolte's mugshot. It's like really just, he looks like a wreck. Like he looks like he's been on like a bender for a week.
He's a little overextended, perhaps.
Yeah. So, but coming out of that match, I mean, yeah, I'd say Wolves are a team to target, especially if you have offensive players, but. If you're in a fix and you need somebody that's a 4-5 and there's favorable matchups, I think Aiden Nuri looked really good in that first half. He looked outside of that deflection on that one goal. I mean, he was going into the box. He was really dynamic. He wasn't defending well at all, but this is FPL. So, I mean,
this is FPL. Yeah. You only have to be a baller one way. And that's why we love Trent Alexander-Arnold. So this is kind of the undercurrent of this episode, Pat, is we've just finished the first 2 weeks of the FPL season. What we need to find out is who stinks and who doesn't stink. Like, have we learned anything? And is Aiden Nuri a guy who suddenly we need to pick out from the rough because the Lewis Halls and the Quances of the world are failing us? I think that I'm struggling to figure out what the learnings are from the first 2 game weeks because they're all pretty obvious. Salah, Saka, Haaland, good. Trent, good. Like all the good players are good, and it is still like it's as it always is with fantasy. It's that squishy middle, and to kind of like compound how confusing this season is. Just the last point on this Wolves Chelsea match, and we'll actually talk a lot about the Chelsea players later when we get into our like game by game reflections. The takeaway here from the XG Philosophy Twitter feed was Wolves XG from this match, in which they scored 2 goals, was 2.11. Chelsea scored 2 goals, and their XG was, from the XG Philosophy, 1.65. The overperformance of Chelsea is crazy. And I expect that this is going to be a big story this week about this overperformance of the XG. But if you did watch that match, and if you just watch the goals that Chelsea scored, it's, to me, a slight indictment of XG as a stat, because even Madueke's goals in particular, those should have been much higher XG as far as I'm concerned.
That's Jose Sa, baby.
Yeah, that's the Sa.
That's the Sa
effect,
baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, I agree, because I saw that the XG totals, and look, I don't know how XG works, honestly. But the thing about it was that, yeah, I didn't find that any of those goals that were actually scored of the 6 were difficult, worldy, like from distance, all the other factors that are
maybe
involved.
Cole Palmer, like his presence of mind and his awareness of the space he was in Sa's position. That is probably the standout goal as far as that is concerned. But yeah, let's come back to this and talk about the actual Chelsea players. But Pat, I want to get down to brass tacks with your fantasy season. First of all, people will know you in the fantasy community by your team name. Everyone's talking about it. Dr. PP Poo Poo. I was chuckling to myself when I was putting our running order together, because your team uniform is true to, it's the colors are true to the PP and Poo Poo of your name. And I've got your team ID here up on the YouTube if you want to check out.
It's not just a name. Yeah. It's
a lifestyle, right?
It's an FPL lifestyle. I would say general lifestyle, but I don't want to shame anyone. But
sure, whatever you're into.
But yeah, it's
we don't need a backstory on the PP.
I hate puns. I hate puns, and whatever.
Fair enough. I like that. Yeah.
I have a doctorate, not to brag. Anyone can get one nowadays.
I'm looking at my watch. How long it took you to drop that fact? You are an actual doctor. So to put that brain to work, you had a grand strategy going into this FPL season, Pat, where you said, "I'm going to big brain it. I'm going to target game week 1 super hard."
Yeah.
And you played your bench boost chip. And what unlocked that bench boost was the understanding that you were going to wild card in game week 2. So talk a little bit about how you arrived at that strategy, and then let's get into it with where your wild card in game week 2 ended up.
Yeah. So I the bench, I hate bench boost. It's the chip that I always do the worst with. Even in my best season statistically that I've ever had, in my best finish, I dog the bench boost so badly because you have all those factors where it's just I need to account for these matchups, and I need to get a second goalkeeper, and I have to get Ben Foster in and take a hit for. It's just it's something that I don't need the stress later on.
Yep.
And then the week 1 matchups were really favorable for a lot of teams that I was not necessarily sure that I wanted to keep around later on. And also I wasn't too keen on the Chelsea Man City matchup. So I figured okay, what the heck? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get 3 Liverpool, 3 Newcastle, 3 just kind of load on particular teams. Get Son, get other people like that, and then put in the bench have Pedro and other players that had favorable matchups.
Sure.
Have that second goalkeeper and take advantage of it. And up until the 88th minute of the Bournemouth Nottingham Forest game, I was just I've solved this. And then Semenyo scored that goal, and I was like, "Of course, it's Forest. Why did I put my faith in Forest?"
How far double wiped you in overall rank? Where were you at that point before the Semenyo goal?
I was at 2,000.
Jesus.
But I sent you that one draft, and I was just if I ran with this, I would have been better. But everybody says that
number 1 in the world at one point during the
because it was Semenyo and Saka and all those people like that. But
incredible,
whatever. So
you're not salty about it. That's fine. So you still
listen. I've had game week.
Smash it.
I've had game weeks of being I mean, I had game weeks of 69 and 420 in the past, so that's all. That's all good.
Game week average in game week 2 was 69 for all those hashtag masters out there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put your wild card team up on the screen, and I'm just gonna read through your like where you ended up, and then you can kind of like talk me through how you're feeling now.
Ooh,
So
fancy.
bench boost kind of like puts you in a solid position, and then when you really twist the knife is with the wild card.
Yeah.
You landed on 72 points for the game week. You captained Haaland. Now, because you wild carded, the option to triple captain was not available to you.
No.
But I thought there are many different ways to smash this game week without the triple captaincy. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to my game week score. But you have Raya in goal, which I do really love that. Like I have Dean Henderson, and now I'm just looking around and being like 4.5 goalkeepers. How did I end up here? How did everyone talk me into it? I hate it here. Raya in goal, Trent, Anthony Robinson, and Munoz from Palace in your back line. On the bench and defense, you've got the boy Greaves, who was really impressive in game week 1. And then that City match, hard to draw any judgments about Ipswich from that. And Moscario with a -2. And hard to avoid that when you are going up the 1.62 XG of Chelsea. Across the midfield, Eze, Rogers, and Bomo, Jota, and then Phil Foden was probably the biggest bust of your wild card. Sure, probably will come through eventually. Isak Haaland.
No, he's already gone, actually.
He's gone. Okay. All right.
That was my
Adam
big
Armstrong.
brain move, was that. Yeah.
All right. Adam Armstrong is your third forward. So there's the team. You already moved Foden out, or you already know what the plan is to get
I already
rid of
moved Foden out because of the price rises and falls. He's due for a fall, and Saka is pretty close to a rise. And that was actually my plan from game week 3. Like from the beginning for game week 3 was to go some 9.5 Man City player to Saka and just kind of do the hokey cokey in that sort of way.
Gotcha.
I know that you listen to various FPL content and they say don't book transfers. Well,
sometimes you gotta,
it's called strategy.
Saka just like is the easiest pick of all time right now. He looks so dialed in just in these last 2 Arsenal matches, and Arsenal themselves look like a finely balanced instrument. I'm really enjoying them so far.
Yeah. So and with the Foden pick, it was basically a coin flip of him or De Bruyne. And okay. I just figured, I'll go with Foden because I figured because he had that cameo in the first week.
Sure, I would have
he's
thought
going to come in.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he hung out late at night with Jack or if he, ate something bad or he's in trouble or it's who knows, but it's I that was like my plan from the beginning, where the first week was just kind of, I thought of it almost like an ultra free hit essentially. And there's also the questions about who's ready after going to the Euros, who's ready after going to the Olympics. So I figured to free myself from the binds of that. Obviously my week wasn't particularly great. I still like Eze a lot. He just seems to be unlucky with hitting the post and things like that, or hitting the crossbar. I'm really looking forward to having Rogers from here on. Really looking for. I think I moved a little too early with Mbeumo, but it's the curse of the first mover. So
great fixture next week for Mbeumo, home hosting Southampton. So he's going to get something in that one. So we'll get into all these players. I think like we're going to just run through the fixtures this weekend to find out what we learned or what we didn't learn. So Dr. PP Poo Poo just going to put this away for a moment. I'm going to put my team up on the screen, and I held my transfer because I didn't have any like major things to fix. And Solanke was really my big concern coming into the weekend because he had this injury that he sustained in last week's match, it was odd the way the news came out, where Ange was like, well, yeah, somebody's trod across his ankle. It was a problem, and yet he played the entire 90 minutes. And then the thing that you wanted to hear least as a Solanke owner was Ange said, but the international break is coming up, which kind of like signals that maybe Solanke is out until after the international break. So he'd be back maybe game week 4 at the earliest. So I decided to just bench him. And this was the opportunity, Pat, why I got Brereton Diaz to begin with. Okay. why have such a weapon? And there are many different ways to read that word weapon in this case on your bench if you can't use it. So Brereton Diaz came on, and Southampton just super ineffectual and tough. But Solanke, his price was locked over the weekend. I think that changes now that the game week deadline is turned over, or the game week is shut, basically. So I'm curious to see if he does drop this weekend. Can you comprehend those rules at all, Pat?
No,
absolutely not. You have a PhD, so nothing's getting by you. I just didn't have it in me to do the triple captaincy on Haaland. You know, the conservative nature that I have is sort of like, I was actually inspired by track and field events that we were watching in the Olympics in Paris recently of, you know, the great runners that will finish the race strong. Their only goal is to stay with the pack and conserve energy to sprint to the finish. That's what I was thinking, like holding the triple captaincy. Who knows how the double game weeks, if there are any, actually shake out. But I felt like if I can keep pace, and that's kind of exactly what I did this week. I finished on 90 points. So happy with that final score. I got returns from everybody except Dean Henderson in goal, Brereton Diaz, and then Isak. Midfield was super strong with returns from Gordon, Smith-Rowe, Saka, Diogo Jota, clean sheets from Saliba and Pedro Porro, and then Anthony Robinson finishes on a bonus and an assist, and then the captaincy on Haaland. So bingo, bango, job's done. It's a good one. Solanke to somebody this week feels like it's definitely going to happen. And the way I'm approaching it, Pat, I think is move Solanke to a cheaper third forward like Joao Pedro, because I think I'm needing a little bit of money just in case I need to go for Trent Alexander-Arnold. I have this strong temptation, and try to talk me out of this, Pat, to bring in Alisson in goal. Should I do that with the money I have now?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, because the thing about Alisson is, it almost seems like, in a way, a bit of a coverage pick for their defense. And they've gotten
that's exactly what it is, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you can given how Liam Delap totally just like destroyed Quatsa, I think that Quatsa's on the pine for a while. So I have a feeling like you could go Konate, you could go so VVD. Obviously, I think VVD is a pretty decent pick.
Better value than Alisson.
Yeah, because he has the he has header threat. He does really well with the BPS systems. So I think that Alisson, I think the logic with Raya is, and the benefit of Raya is that you don't have that situation where it's oops, surprise, Gabriel has been benched, right? And you pay, a little bit less, and you have that security of him unless he's hurt, that security of him starting, him being there, you pulling the clean sheet. Obviously, he's done well with the bonus, so it's not a total 6-2 situation. But I find that of all the premium goalkeepers, like, he's probably the one that if you want to do that sort of thing, you do it. And if he
had the most incredible save I have seen in years against Aston Villa this weekend. It fell out of my chair.
Unreal.
Yeah. Unreal. Right.
But it's, I think that, I do like that.
Okay.
As we will talk about, Joao Pedro looked really good. I mean, he looked really, really super solid. And this is coming from a guy that overthought things and brought in the incomparable Adam Armstrong onto his team. But you have
tell
those
me
two.
a little story about Adam Armstrong. What did you think was going to happen there?
Bad stuff. Obviously bad stuff. Nothing good was going to come with getting, Adam Armstrong.
Right.
But I think with the 2 weeks, we have a little bit more assurance that he's going to be a fixture in that team. Although Brighton have just throngs of players at their disposal. I think that you have that security of a little bit more security of start. You have the penalties, which is really important. And he looked really good. I mean, outside of that goal he scored, he looked like he looked really, really solid. And
right.
A lot of times he is really great with the non-FPL stuff. Like he'll get 2 points, but he'll do a lot of things that are really solid, and his game is really great. But he's kind of translating that over a little bit more. And I think that that's a really good thing, especially if he can allow you to get TAA.
Yeah, and on that, like doing those things is good for your overall BPS. So when Joao Pedro finally gets that winning goal for Brighton in injury time, suddenly he's on 2 bonus, and which we'll compare him to Welbeck in a moment, I think. But I like that read on Joao Pedro. Going back to the chip talk, so you played your bench boost and your wild card. What were your thoughts about the talk about Haaland's triple cap coming to this weekend? Do you feel like you missed the boat a little bit, or that's just kind of how
I don't
the
think
cookie
so.
crumbles? Yeah.
I also really hate all chips except for the mystery chip, which just has that element of suspense and intrigue that I can really get
What do you
into.
think it's going to be? Give me your best shot.
I don't even want to know. Because
I
don't even want to know.
I'm not that quick. Mystery trip.
See, it's the beauty of it, and I can't wait for it to be terrible.
Yeah.
Right? I want it to be either terrible so people can whine, or I want it to be so good and like give an out for the quote unquote casuals to make certain people whine. I mean, it's like that's the only that mystery chip is the only thing drawing me into possibly reactivating Twitter. Is like
I know you're a really superstitious guy too, Pat. Like you refused to even meet your wife before you got married. You wouldn't, let alone like just see what she looked like on your wedding day before she was walking down the aisle. So yeah, the more we can keep this away from our prying eyes, the better. All right. So looking ahead to next.
If you
go
did
ahead,
it,
finish
great.
your thought.
Yeah. If with the triple captain, I mean, of any matchup that would be a single game week matchup, that would probably have been like when the season started, the most obvious like match at home against Ipswich. But I think that as the season has progressed, and it turned out well for everybody that pulled it. Great job. You kind of go around all the Euro, stuff and the bench, the circulation and benchings and all that sort of stuff. But I think that one of the things about it is that as we can see, teams like Wolves, teams like there's other teams that are going to be absolute minnows, and if they're in a single game week, and obviously you risk Haaland getting that benching for rest or something like that later on in the season. Like there are other plum home fixtures that are in place for Haaland, so like we haven't lost out. And even though there is like supposedly less double game weeks this year, which I don't know. I don't know where Ben Krelling got that information, but
he's got his sources. That guy's a hard scrabble journalist. I love it. Yeah. Now we know, Pat, what the gap is that we have to make up, and that's the most important thing. We know where we stand. All right, I'm gonna pull up the fixtures real quick for us because I want to just jam through some game week 3 advanced talk, namely captaincy. So Haaland was the easy pick in game week 2. Game week 3, I think it starts to get a little more complicated. Liverpool are away Manchester United. People look at that fixture and they can get confused and forget that this is basically like the best captaincy fixture in recent memory. Liverpool traditionally goes to Old Trafford and absolutely like sets fire to the United squad. I think their last trip to Old Trafford was a slightly different story, but just historically in the last few years, that's fairly true. Arsenal, the curse of the opening fixture, and Brighton's manager, that German guy, Holzer, what's his name? Hertzler. He looks like a serial killer, does he not? Like he looks cool. Like and he's clearly smart.
He doesn't have 3 names. He's not, Conrad Ray Hersler, So
if you look at like Arne Slot on the touchline, he has a very focused look, but there's something human about him. And Hersler on the sideline just had this stone expression of, I don't know. He was up to something. So anyway, it's Arsenal will certainly be favored at the Emirates to win that match. But as far as your captaincy goes, it's the first fixture, and also you don't expect that to be some sort of a high scoring affair. It could potentially be kind of tight. Anybody else on Saturday that might have appeal? What do you make of City away at the London Stadium v West Ham?
Because I was about to say it's the opposite of Gary O'Neill, who like leans over that tablet like a dad getting away from his kids watching like a basketball game on his phone while in the toilet, just taking a dump. A
every manager has their way, don't they?
Yeah, it's Bielsa, everybody. You got to have panache. But I this one's going to be a little bit tricky, I think, and this is going to be one of those weeks where there isn't like a chalk consensus pick.
Right.
So there is going to be a little bit more separation there. I do think that initially I was going to think, it's Saka going up against Brighton. But I mean, Brighton's tactics, their defense is very pesky. Like they're very pesky, very annoying. And I don't know how somebody knows tactics better than I do, which is not hard, would probably have a better understanding of it. But, I'm not as keen on Saka right now as a captain, although I kind of have him set there. And that was like my sense. I think Haaland against West Ham could be a great pick. I think that's kind of my sense of what the great pick would be. Obviously
really going out on a limb there, Pat.
Yeah, I know. Just hot takes international right here. But I think that Salah would be a fantastic captain as well. I mean, Man U are just I can't cuss on this thing to really like fully capture what I think of Man U and particularly Eric Ten Hag right now. But I think
it's wild stuff.
And history basically kind of has bore out that Salah is great against Man U. That's like, those are his whipping boys. So I think that Salah if you have Salah, captain him. If you don't have Salah, captain Haaland. I think a really good rogue captain, if you have him or transfer him in, or if you're thinking about doing the hit, like to do the double swap. If you get Palmer in, that actually might not be a bad move to captain him. I mean, he looked so good. Those side passes were just on point. He was feeling himself.
Those side passes. What was up with Wolves defense? Because they just let the penetration of that Chelsea team, there was no resistance whatsoever. Like maybe step up and challenge, pressurize Palmer, maybe move another defender, like shift it a little bit to the left as Palmer and Madueke are absolutely destroying you. But every attack seemed to be Palmer was able to surge into the box without any pressure.
It's the Wolves D. I mean, they're relying on Doherty to play defense.
Right.
I mean, that's not going to fly.
Tough,
I mean, it's
not tough stuff.
Yeah. So I would say, let's see what other folks are.
Give me one more rogue. Give me the roguest of rogue picks.
The roguest of rogue picks.
What about Emile Smith-Rowe against Ipswich Town?
I'll tell you what. For those of Jota might even be great. I mean, Jota, like he's scored and all this sort of stuff. He's returned each week, but there's been in both games instances where that header in game one and then the deflection off of Collins, those were, easily could have been, if it wasn't for the game, an inch here, an inch there, a deflection there, he could have scored 2 extra goals. So, I mean, if you
it's interesting. I think with Jota, his season is suddenly becoming defined by all of these missed chances, even though he's having a great start to the season and he's clutch for fantasy managers. Jota's reputation coming into the season is that he just doesn't miss chances. He's in the right place at the right time and pretty clinical. But I tend to agree with you then, though. Like it's only a matter of time before he doesn't. What's the opposite of regress to the mean? He like rises to the mean where he does start finishing those chances, right?
It's called rising to the occasion. That's what you got to do.
There we go. Absolutely. Put that in your dissertation. All right. So here's the more important question then, captaincy, Pat. Who's gonna have that xDIH? You know, there's XG philosophy. Where's the xDIH philosophy Twitter account?
DIH, like
that stands for
D in hand.
Who? No, the opposite. The opposite. Who's got that dog in him in game week 3? So, you know, that's that player who is going to scrap their way to some hard fought FPL points. The Anthony Gordons, the Brereton Diaz's, the Rodgers. We haven't talked about. Well, we're going to get to Villa a little bit when we talk more about that Arsenal Villa match and Rodgers with his coming out party, even though he didn't get any attacking returns, looked incredible. So as far as like a DIH candidate, who you got?
I would say honestly anybody. So I mean, given off of who everybody is seeking to drop, I mean, Ollie Watkins. I mean, Ollie Watkins.
Yeah, right. I love this
against Leicester. I mean, he's going to carve. He could carve them up, and Rodgers as well. I mean, don't let the numbers deceive you. Leicester their defense is ridiculously, like, I looked at it and I just laughed because it didn't change really since the point they got relegated. They got Voss. They have just the only thing that's missing is Schmeichel,
Vestergaard.
Ward and Everson, the two-headed monster. Like that's the only thing that's missing. And I think that they're definitely like this is going to be the beginning like of a purple patch for anybody that has Watkins. If you have Rodgers on your bench, this is the patch in which he's really going to play really well. I'm just trying to see all the other ones. I mean, I'm actually really salivating. I'm not going to bring anybody in from them, but like I'm really salivating about Bournemouth versus Everton.
Tell me more.
Because I think that they have some really outside of like that game was so because I watched that one with my son. And outside of them, that just the ridiculous refereeing. Like I know Ouattara had it was a handball, but like just one of their players taking like a Stan Hansen lariat, like and then not being a red card, that was just ridiculous. But they had like Evan Elson, Tavernier, Kluivert, Semenyo. They have some really great offensive
Kluivert's
pieces.
A baller for sure.
Yeah, and I mean they're 5-5. I think that their fixtures are a little bit hot and cold, but if you can get like a good rotation going, I think that you might do really well by having like particularly Semenyo. I think Semenyo has just he looked really awesome at the end of this last season, and I think that this year, they're starting to gel together. I think that they could do some things. They're really, really well managed. So I think that they're going to actually do quite well. Let's see. No offense to Fulham. I mean, maybe Sammy Schmodix might get another goal. I mean, he's definitely
I do. Yeah.
I wouldn't get Sammy Schmodix, but if you want a 1 week punt, sure. Why not go for it? Have fun.
I was a little rash with that Emile Smith Rowe call out because I do think Fulham get the respect that they deserve. They're going to have a good season, but they're just not they're just not juggernauts the way a lot of these teams are. And for them going away, Ipswich, that's not an easy match. It's not necessarily an easy match for a lot of teams in the Premier League right now, but that's not going to be a high ceiling match, I don't think. Just Aston Villa, you're absolutely right. And I was looking at ways to get Ollie Watkins in for Solanke going into game week 3. And I'm like, there's no way to do it without really just getting rid of another good guy. And I'm not necessarily ready to go for Ollie Watkins until we've actually seen him do something. Now, I think his performance against Arsenal had its moments. Like he forced Raya into the best save of the season. So at least he's getting into those positions. Let's talk a little bit more about Aston Villa when we get to that match. But first,
and I actually have one more, and I just flashed in there.
Yes,
if you have Morgan Gibbs White, you're going to be smiling going into this week because it's the MGW Nuno Derby right there. They're coming back. They're back and they're pissed off. So they're ready to just beat down on the Wolves. Yeah.
Is there beef between Morgan Gibbs White and Wolves?
I think so.
That needs to be squashed.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Whether there is or not, this is how we stir up controversy, creates conversation. I love that. All right, let's get in some plugs here, and then we're going to run through the weekend's action. First of all, Fantasy Football Hub. If you need a one-stop shop for all your fantasy needs, if you feel like I haven't figured out a way to build data seamlessly into how I'm approaching this season of FPL, if you just want a place to check out best managers and what teams they have going in to game week, my favorite tool on Fantasy Football Hub is actually their player comparison tool, where you're just trying to decide between two players. You put their names into the tool, and it shows you all of the top line FPL stats, and it's very visually pleasing. You can get 50% off a membership at any tier at the Hub by listening to Always Cheating. Go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always. You can join for the full season at 50% off, or just try it month to month and see how you like it. Also, Ben Crellin, you mentioned his name, Pat. Ben posts his team on the Hub, and his transfer planner spreadsheet is also available to members there. So do check it out, fantasyfootballhub.co.uk/always for 50% off. And also Patreon, if you like what you hear with Always Cheating and you want to say thanks and support what we do, and not just say thanks, Pat, but you get more FPL content in return. Is that true? Do you feel like as a Patreon supporter of the pod, you get more FPL content?
I am just more content than you can possibly handle.
More than you're shaking a stick right now as you say that. But no, it's true. If you go to patreon.com/always cheating, we've got a number of tiers there that fit your lifestyle. But that content includes an extra podcast every Thursday before the game week deadline. And that podcast comes on a fully ad-free podcast feed, in which this main feed pod is also available there for you. Plus, you get access to our Discord community, fun mini leagues all over that Discord. And if you need some personal Rate My Team advice, Josh and I are there to help at all times. New Patreon thank yous new this week: Ollie Christian Gregsker, D. Osmond, Nathan O'Donnell, and Worcestershire Sauce. A great Bloody Mary accoutrement just became a Patreon supporter.
Is that their government name? Like on their credit card information, it says Worcestershire Sauce.
True story, Pat. I used to work at the library when I was in college, and this kid, he forgot his student ID, so he had to produce his driver's license. And on his driver's license, it did say his name was Luscious, middle initial N, last name Delicious.
Yeah,
and he was a legend around campus for actually officially changing his name to Luscious and Delicious. They're crazy. So I've seen crazier things than Worcestershire Sauce.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it was a fake ID situation because I've had some really funny fake ID names.
That never occurred to me. I'm so naive.
Yeah. All
right.
I got into many. I got into a couple bars with my old Generals McGee. Fake ID. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Yeah. Once again, patreon.com/always cheating. But what you can do for free, if that's not your bag, to help the pod is just join the Always Cheating Super League. That's our mini league, free and open to all of our listeners. The code for that is QVC0ND, or just go to alwayscheating.com and click the auto join link, or just rate, review, and share the pod. We super appreciate it, just like I appreciate you, Pat, joining the pod. It's like I'm running a radio program. Yeah, I'm running a radio program. I'm doing like ID checks every hour just to make sure, like
tote
a station
bags,
identification,
all that sort of thing. Yeah, do it.
Yeah. All right. So again, we're joined by Pat, Dr. PP Poo Poo, and Pat. What we're gonna do now? Is figure out what the heck we've learned through the first 2 weeks of the Premier League season. Kind of go like team by team through the fixtures from the weekend and. This podcast is supported by IPVanish VPN. If you care about the security of your online activity, The easiest way to protect yourself is with IPVanish. Rated excellent on Trustpilot, IPVanish provides an encrypted connection for all of your internet traffic, helping to prevent websites, Wi-Fi providers, and hackers from intercepting your data. Help keep your financial details, personal information, and online activities safe from threats with IPVanish. Get started with this limited time offer and save 83% on our 2-year subscription. Visit ipvanish.com/cheating. Again, that's ipvanish.com/cheating. Sort of parse it out. Are there players from the preseason that you got wrong or that you were right about? First up, of course, was Brighton Manchester United. And I think what was gotten wrong in the preseason was Manchester United maybe have a shot at top 4. And to me, that was just such a peculiar take. And, all blessings to Manchester United supporters and fans, nothing against the club, but it's not like you guys are out of the desert just yet. Like, what pointed to United being out of that desert? Ten Hag is, where do you stand on this whole, like, the meat grinder of managers, right? And a lot of fans would say, I'm sick of my club just hiring and firing managers. We need stability. That helps a lot. Like Fulham has benefited from just getting in a stable manager, and just helps that Marco Silva is a great manager. The problem with Ten Hag is just like another hire for Manchester United who cannot coach, it seems.
You said the point in which it was clear. I was watching the game. So I woke up at 4 a.m. to watch this game, which was a real head trip to watch. It's between like I thought the game was on like 0.25 like speed because how fast everything was moving.
Yeah.
The accidental scorpion kick by Rashford and that
that was good. That was good.
Xerxes follies, like that was just like it was. But
the offside was at the look on Garnacho's face when he was watching the replays. I just could not believe his dumb luck.
But
there was 2 weeks in a row where he has tap-ins, and it's
Yeah, I think that the moment I knew that Ten Hag was just like he was. Well, I mean, also Maguire just being lummoxy, just like peak lummox. There was a point where they got to Ten Hag on the sidelines, and he's like ranting about something, and he's in his suit, and he just reminded me of like a manager of like a cell phone store, like an AT&T wireless.
He's like in one of those kiosk islands in the middle of the mall.
Or like a mid-level, like a mid-level restaurant, like kind of like not like an Olive Garden, but maybe like a Bahama Breeze or something, who completely overdresses to work, like completely overdresses to work. It like is so into like what corporate has to say.
Sure. Yeah.
And then also is like really into art, like Sun Tzu's Art of War, like just like one of those guys. And he's just ranting about like, you need to work harder, blah, 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 while his employees are in the background just doing jerk off motions with their hands. Like
totally.
Like, the players on the bench just looked so disinterested.
Yeah.
And
that's
just the juxtaposition of it. I mean, it's not
the culture. The
great.
Culture is there's just been a cultural vacuum there. I mean, to state the obvious, is since Sir Alex Ferguson left, and that's kind of an impossible thing to replicate. Maybe that's like a once every other generation sort of a thing. So something needs to be fixed there. But for our like immediate FPL concerns, a lot of people have been in on Bruno Fernandes since the start of the season. It's not like he's been bad. It's not like he's a bad player, but is that taking up precious money in your fantasy squad right now?
I think it's compounded by the fact that there's better. Right.
Yeah,
I think that it's one of those things where if there haven't been players in especially a lower price bracket in that 7-6-5 range, like that really shine. And then you get in your mind, I could use that 2.5 and I can move it, downwards to get Ollie, move it upwards to get Trent, kind of, fidgeting with it. I think that people would be a little more patient. But I think that Bruno, if there is a sort of thing where you have a grand plan and you're trying to, shuffle things out to get a really good player. Like if you are like, okay, I really want Jota, or I really want, somebody else. Like I would say probably, I would move on him. But I can totally understand why people picked him. He's been playing, he's had moments where he's played well when he was that false nine at the beginning of the game. He's had moments where it's looked really solid, but I think honestly, I would move him, and especially if it's enabling something. But if you want to keep him for sentimentality's sake, or you want a penalty, or you just like dislikable people, like go for it.
Yeah.
Party down. But but Brighton in that game really showed that like there's both on the, because they were underselling them as a defensive team. Their defense is so, it's so pesky. Like everything just moves so quickly. I mean, it's very just active, and I would say, like, if you're looking for a 4-5 defender, Dunk would be solid. I mean, he's a solid pick. We talked about Joao Pedro. Matoma, he's price risen, but they're going into a really good point at game week 4. And Welbeck. I mean, if you want to go for Welbeck, if you want that sort of, I was a little bit afraid of Welbeck because of his injury, background, and they have all those young players.
I know you are, Pat. You thought he's too old. Now this is
that I'm 28 years old. I mean, obviously, I have a problem with old
Benjamin
people,
Button over here.
Right.
Seriously though, we big upped Joao Pedro at the start of the pod. I agreed with everything that you said in terms of him just looking really strong. He's getting the minutes. He's played almost a full 90 in each of the 2 game weeks, whereas Welbeck, even though he is delivering massively on fantasy points, is playing more limited minutes. But still, we want the fantasy points. Why are we not going for Welbeck instead of Joao Pedro?
I think there is this sort of element of injury concerns, right? Because he has those periods where he does shine and then he gets injured. Where's Ferguson going to come into the picture? Reuter and all these people like that, because you have a lot of Swiss Army knives on that team, and Welbeck is a 9. Like, he is a striker, and that's I think the fear that we have.
He does one job.
And I think Brighton has a lot of really great low priced assets. Minte, not one of them. He was.
You don't think so?
He was. It was like those things when you were a kid. Did you watch And One mixtape when you were a kid?
For sure. There's a great And One documentary on Netflix about the rise and fall of And One. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, and he, like, the way in which, because we saw like the highlight reels, because we didn't really know much about him, or a lot of us didn't.
The professor.
We always have that. Yeah, the professor. He's such handles. But like when you were a kid, you were like, why aren't the And One mixtape guys like playing in the NBA? And what would happen? And I think it's a similar sort of thing where he would dribble and he would do some impressive stuff, and then he'd cough the ball up, or he would have just like, he would pass and he would have a heavy foot and just overshoot. And I think that, Minte's young. I think that perhaps, like, look, the first 2 games he's getting his feel. I don't know, but I think that right now, there's other people on Brighton that look really
very
really
diplomatically
at the same price.
Diplomatically put there, Pat. All right, we need to talk about Crystal Palace, my friend, because a lot of people kind of went all in on Palace, and they hosted West Ham. It should have been like, bring the party back to Palace sort of situation. Glasner finished the season so strongly with Palace at the end of last season, and it's just been a horror show against Brentford in game week 1, and then they were just totally handled by West Ham this weekend. What are we doing with Palace? Like, my feeling is, I don't want Dean Henderson. This is not fun. I don't like it. Of course, like when we got to the game week 1 deadline, there were these rumors of like both Gahey and Anderson both wanting out, like the center back pairing getting busted up. So the defense, we should have kind of understood coming into the season something wasn't quite right. And I think that was a big misread on everybody's part. Munoz, with his attacking prowess, will probably still come good to in shades over the course of the season. But I'm kind of like out on Palace altogether, but we do have a couple of questions from Timbo Slice. Is it time to get rid of Palace assets, including or excluding Eze? And Aloha Lounge wants to know, are Isak and Eze, we're talking about Eze here, he knows they'll eventually score. Is their pedigree too strong for this drought to last, or is there any reason to hold them or jump off to a hot asset? So where are you at with Palace, Pat? Do you think like our patience with Eze and the Palace defense should be gone at this point?
I think that if you have Munoz, you keep him because I think he's a lot like Jedi in the sense that you're not necessarily coming in for the assuredness of clean sheets. You're coming in for attacking returns.
Yeah.
And they have some really, solid people in the midfield. Mateta hasn't been playing, they've had, that full time. So I think that
and he started with Edouard this weekend against West Ham, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things is it's not a complete package. But if you have Munoz, like hold him, I got him. That's what I expected.
And
really.
Eze similar. I feel like you've got to feel similar.
Yeah, Eze's been very unlucky. I mean, there could have easily been, in the numerous shots that he's gotten that have been really close, like they could have, one or two of them could have gotten in. And I think that you go with them, especially going up against Chelsea. Like, Chelsea just hung 6, but you're not necessarily going for, if you have Gehi or if you have Anderson, I guess, Anderson, you have, him on Fulham. So that's a completely different story. But like, look, like their defense was absolute booty cheeks in the first half. Like they were so bad. Like Chelsea's defense was so awful. Like Gusto didn't know what he was doing out there. I think that honestly, like Cucurella was just like throwing tantrums and stuff. Like, I think that honestly, Eze's on penalties. I think Eze could like return, get an assist and return like a goal or something against Chelsea. I think that Chelsea's defense is incredibly shaky. So I think that if you have Eze, unless you have a pressing need to get somebody in who has great fixtures or is performing really well, like keep him. If it's a situation where it's like, oh, I really want to get this person because I'm missing them or my team's incomplete or what have you, like it behooves me to get Jota or something. And Eze's like the key to it. Like, do that. But I would say I would not sell Eze. I would hold him. And I think Munoz, similarly.
Similarly, here's a take for you. I think West Ham is fool's gold here. I even though they looked good, I would say they're fantasy fool's gold. It looks like Lopetegui's gonna do well with them this season. They have Manchester City in game week 3, and then it's who do they have after that? They have Fulham away, Chelsea home, Brentford away, and then Ipswich. So there are some decent fixtures. I think I want to see just one more match in which they look as strong as they did against Palace. Because we've, even though Lopetegui's coming in, he's got some new players. I think we've seen this version of West Ham where they can be good and then not so good again week to week. So I'm just kind of like holding out for some consistency there. The next team we should talk about is Fulham because I feel like all of our Fulham wishes came true in this weekend. None of them really came true in game week 1, but it was the season opening fixture. They were away at Old Trafford. Not the easiest for a team of Fulham's ilk. Suddenly, Anthony Robinson gets his assist as his attacking return as billed preseason. He is an attacking fullback. Smith Rowe has a beautifully finished and gets 3 bonus. And then, Iwobi, that man. So Fulham are fantastic. We've got a couple of questions, though. EPL Joe wants to know, with Anderson's transfer to Fulham, I'm now doubled up on their defense as I already had Robinson. Is it worth holding both or drop one? If so, who should I be looking at? I kind of feel like this is great for Fulham with Anderson coming in, but it's bad for fantasy managers. It's not the sort of defense where I think you want to be. I want a little bit of variety, particularly with my 4.5 defenders. How are you feeling about Fulham generally, Pat? Do you feel like this is kind of like a blind spot of yours fantasy wise, a team that you're not interested in, or are you just like, man, I want some of this?
I don't want some of this, but it's not a thing of like but it's not like a thing of I'm kicking myself for not having Smith Rowe, especially after some of the other choices I made with my life, Adam Armstrong. But I think
come good, Pat. I'm sure of it.
No, I don't think Southampton's going to score another goal this year.
It's going to be rough.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
It's the curse of Che Adams. Che Adams cursed them when he left.
Yeah. But I think ESR is if you have him, you're happy. He's definitely a really solid.
What about 5.5? Muniz, Rodrigo Muniz. Everyone was he was the bandwagon in terms of like a replacement for Solanke in game week 2. The issue is a classic like number 9 in a modern game sort of issue where Muniz is just he's a player he's playing a part in the buildup, and that's pretty much the extent of it. He's not the focal point. He is just a wall to pass off of. He is going to get some goals throughout the course of the season. You do worry. Marco Silva said in his presser lead coming into the weekend that he was almost certainly going to sign another forward in the transfer window. Could be a backup striker. I don't think he has any confidence in Raul Jimenez at this point. So Muniz don't think he's an immediate threat of losing his spot. But the issue, and I think he's good for the team. He's good for the starting 11. I just am worried about his fantasy potential at the moment. So that's just kind of my read on Fulham. I'm with you. Like Smith Rowe seems like the 5.5 of choice right now. And I think they're working with him, obviously, to get his minutes up. And I think he'll be playing 80, 85 minutes per match pretty quickly. That does take us to Leicester, the other side of this fixture, the Vardy party. It was over before it began. Is it what's the party pun we can make with Vout face? Is FaceTime?
Don't ask me about puns. My team name is Dr. Pee Pee Poo Poo. So because I hate puns so much.
We've been through this, Pat.
I know. But I think the fact that Wout Faes is like rising in price is just absolutely hilarious.
It's incredible.
It's so funny. I think, isn't Vardy's calling card that he like scores big against like the good teams, right? So when they play their next big fixture that nobody would start him in, he's going to brace or something like that.
Yeah.
And just completely go insane. I would say, Leicester is they're gnarly. I think that it's just one of those things where
this is why you have out face, right, Pat? Is not because this is a problem that fantasy managers can find themselves in, is like, I can't get him in my fantasy team because I don't respect him or the team. That doesn't necessarily correlate with who's a good fantasy asset. Wout Faes is a good fantasy asset because he's 4.0, soon to be 4.1, and on occasion he'll get on the end of a set piece. That's really all you need out of a 4.0 defender.
There's no room for morals in the 4.0 light space, but I have a Mascara and he
I'd never even heard of him before I looked at your team today.
Yeah, well, Kai Havertz found out. But there was, he's fine. If you need a 4.0, he's fine. Sure. It's just one of those things where he's a punchline. So, I think that, Leicester, I thought that they would give up more goals than they have thus far. But I think that that's about right. It tracks. So.
Totally, and just let's respect that Rodrigo Muniz died so that Jedi and Smith Rowe can thrive. And we love
Muniz. Yeah, he's been getting off a good number of shots and stuff like that. I think that it's like time. And you brought him in. He's a 6.0 forward. You would expect 1 in 3, right? Yeah. I think that's kind of like the fair rate of return for somebody of that price. Somebody of that bracket. And against Ipswich, there's a very good shot that will come.
So that brings us to the Man City Ipswich match, and a huge thank you to James Haaland, our friend, who is a lifelong Ipswich supporter and season ticket holder. He came into our Patreon pod this past week and told us all about what it's been like supporting Ipswich back when they used to be really good and were in the top flight before their return now after 20 years. And it was really fun talking with James, and I hope he really enjoyed that fleeting moment where they thought that they might topple the giants of Man City. Man, I mean, one of the least surprising things you see is when Man City just get a random goal scored on them by any random team and then turn around and score bloody 3 goals in 3 minutes. It was incredible.
It's like the movie Bloodsport when Ray Jackson's fighting that guy in the first round, and like the guy punches him in the nose and he just makes him really angry and he just like destroys him.
Yeah,
like that's what happens.
Like Bloodsport. Yeah,
I love Bloodsport, man.
Totally. And then Erling Haaland just threw sand in in Greaves' eyes and dribbled around him. It was I always thought that moment was very cheating. Didn't rub me the right way in Bloodsport. There's a lot of cheating there. So Ipswich are not that bad. Like they acquitted themselves decently, at least in the first half against Liverpool. Scored a goal, came out swinging against Manchester City. I mean, they were done dirty, Ipswich were, by the scheduling police of the Premier League. You were talking a little bit about getting Delap into your squad on your wild card.
Just galaxy braining, man. Just check out the big brain on me.
But how bad? It's not going to get that bad. Like, I don't think like Ipswich are at that Wolverhampton, Everton. No. Let's target Ipswich and go nuts on these guys fantasy wise.
Because I mean, they could have they had a blown penalty call in that game. Yeah, I mean, so Delap could have scored. I think Delap does pens for them. Could have scored a penalty there. Entirely possible. But I think that Ipswich, they're not like the other promoted teams in the fact that they're being extremely proactive, but they're not doing the thing like Nottingham Forest did, where it was just like, hey, we're going to buy a bunch of people and just like, whatever, spend money, you know? Yeah. So I think that they're being very proactive. McKenna's a great manager. I think that in time, as you said, the scheduling gods were not kind to them. I think over time, they are going to gel. I think that they're going to not necessarily be the like just super bright green team that you have to target. Yeah. I mean, they're a targetable team, especially when you have a top flight team like a Man City or an Arsenal going up against them. Liverpool, what have you. But I think that, they're not necessarily going to be a team like Sheffield United last year, where it's just like, or those Norwich teams, like they're gonna have something about them. Man City, just I mess up on the Foden pick. I should have went De Bruyne, but
should have went Savio. What did you make? That was an incredible
I thought Foden was going to be Savio.
Yeah.
See, so it's
right.
Yeah. Savino,
I see your logic. Yeah.
Yeah, but Savino looked great. I think that that's one of those things that when Rodri comes back, and all the pieces are in place, like, and they start going into European League play. Yeah. Then things are going to move around a little bit, and there's a little bit of there's going to be a lot of question marks because it's Pep. How is he going to rotate? How is he going to week to week? But I mean, Savino looked really good. I mean, he looked the opposite of Doku. I mean, Doku just was, and yeah, it could have been. I mean, honestly, like they could have scored more goals, like Rico Lewis, like hitting the crossbar, but.
Honestly, have you noticed this on the FPL site, Pat, that Savio has this? You don't see the scare quote name.
Yeah,
he's Savio, known as Savinho. I think we need more like also known as scare quote names in these player profiles on the FPL site. That's pretty incredible. Yeah, that's a good comparison you made there between Doku and Savio, where Doku is this. He is like a souped up version of Grealish in terms of dribbling in a more positive way. He's like the more positive Grealish, but there's something so unpolished still about Doku's game, which he's getting there steadily. And then Savio just kind of comes in and is just like, hey, I'm just going to throw a little Brazilian flair at this and make it look super easy. And that is, it really drew me in. So I don't know if Pep's going to see the same, but yeah, there's no one is safe from that rotation, which is the huge concern.
Yeah. And I mean, it's De Bruyne. De Bruyne looked absolutely fabulous. He looked so good. He looked, outside of the fact that he looks mad Gen X and mad divorced right now. Like,
you don't like the hair?
Oh, dude, he's like looking like a total Zach. Like he's
What do you think De Bruyne is wearing when he goes out to dinner at night?
Whatever Adam Duritz wears in the Mr. Jones video.
He's
but I
got
think
like
that,
a big suede trench coat and
fringe and like the flannel shirt tied around his.
Wears like one of those like a cowboy hat. Pharrell wore that one time.
Yeah, I convinced my dad that the lead singer of Counting Crows was Bobcat Goldthwait because he heard Mr. Jones on the radio. Yeah. Sure. And but KDB looked fantastic. And I mean, yeah, that's the question, because I mean he's 9'6". I think he price rose. I don't know the proper grammatical pros rise. But he's like he looked fantastic.
Yes.
And that's the thing about this year. I mean, there are so many players in that strata of 9.5 to 10.5 that in a sense they're all interchangeable right now. Right? There isn't a situation like outside of going for Foden, that you can't necessarily lose because Palmer's doing well, Saka is doing well, KDB is doing well. I mean, all those players in that band, they're doing quite well. And I mean, I think that if you see this as like if you're going up for a wild card for the international break, after the international break, and you want a player just to like throw in there, perhaps. I mean, KDB looked outstanding, and I think that, as you said, West Ham is fool's gold, and I think they're gonna do the business on him. So I think that he's great. I mean, but the problem is the price is right, but you don't know the situation with Pep.
Yeah. It's a nasty business. Southampton, Nottingham Forest. I would like to skip this.
I watched this fine football battle.
Your son forced you to watch this. Who is 5 years old? What's the appeal here for a 5-year-old?
Because my son's favorite team is Liverpool, but his second favorite team is any team that wears the red and white striped kits, because he calls them the popcorn team. Nice. So like I made the foolish choice of being like, oh, I'm just gonna watch. There was a lull in action, so I was like, I'm gonna check it out and see how horrible of a pick Adam Armstrong is. And I turned it on, and my son walks up. He's like, the popcorn team, and I was just like, I'm gonna change it. And he threw a tantrum because he loves the popcorn team.
Yeah, so, you can't fight against that. I mean, I played Brereton Diaz in this match as well, and I think. Yeah, any romance I had about him as a fifth midfield attacker is totally gone. Southampton is kind of a non-starter. Nottingham Forest is kind of interesting in that they're kind of grinding out results. 4 points in their first two matches. If they would have had a little bit more steel against Bournemouth, they'd be nearly top of the table here.
Yeah,
but Chris Wood. Josh really stand for him going into game week 1. And I do wonder if, A1E is on the same GNC regime as Eddie Howe, I would assume, right? Those guys are
Eddie Howe's for mature men, I think. It's that, okay. that like eugenics stuff. He's more on the eugenics side.
Forest fixtures coming up. They've got your boys Wolves in game week 3, followed by Liverpool, Brighton, Fulham, Chelsea. Fixtures getting a little dicier for Forest after game week 3, but I think you stick with those picks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's finalized, but isn't Nketiah going to Nottingham Forest? Or is that a non thing? Is that just like
I haven't seen? Romano? We could be breaking that news on this podcast.
I don't know if Fabrizio Romano has loaded up Photoshop yet, but like, yeah, I mean, I think that
he's a Canva guy. He is.
But Morgan Gibbs White has looked great. I mean, he's looked really, really good. If you walked into him, like into the season with him, you're really happy. I mean, he's looked fantastic. I mean, they are definitely watching them and being forced to watch them against my will to please my, make my son happy. I think that, they have a little bit for a Nuno team. They have a little bit more like offensive intent, I think. But honestly, I mean, Nottingham Forest, keep an eye on them. And if you have Morgan Gibbs-White, you're great. And if Nketiah goes there, that's a 6-0 forward that could really fit in that system.
Not bad.
Really well.
Not bad. All right. When it comes to Spurs Everton, the less said about Everton, the better. Pickford, just a bad pick. He was a bad pick at the start of last season too, to be fair. And Everton were slow to start. I mean, if Everton, I don't know that you can change it at this point. The die feels cast with them, and you've got to continue rolling it with DICE. But Spurs just really bounced back after a disappointing game week 1. You weren't totally convinced, say, like by Heung-min Son last week, or what did you make of his performance this week against Everton?
I watched some of this game. I watched his goals, and one of them was like Pickford just being ridiculous.
He just lost the ball at his feet, and Son had the wherewithal to chase it down.
I mean, they were gimme goals. I think, honestly, I don't know how to read them. Honestly, I don't because I don't know how the team is going to flow once Solanke comes in.
Right.
I
not the finished product.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Poro's Poro's great. If you have Poro, awesome. That's great. I mean,
he does seem like the easiest pick in this team right now. I agree.
I think, and again, I always have questions about they got the clean sheet there, but I just don't know where they stand like as a defensive unit. I really don't. I mean, in any given week, Christian Romero is going to snap in like Mortal Kombat uppercut somebody from the other team, get the red card, and so
he's going to pull somebody's spine out at some point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, he
needs, or maybe better yet, is he going to complete a babality?
Yeah, he needs to learn the codes. Yeah, he needs the code. Learn the codes to do friendship. But I think there's people that probably know Spurs better. I mean, I just am not necessarily, especially given the fact that like last year they were so hot and cold. Like Ange Ball was just like, there was moments where they were like white hot. There's other times where it was just like they were just taking up the pitch. But Maddison has looked quite good.
Yeah, he's such a pivot point for them being good or bad because he is able to open up the field so much and pick really elite passes to destroy like the opposing team's defense. So if Maddison is looking good, that's good for Spurs for sure. And then they'll have Bentancur, I think, back from his concussion protocol next week. I would not honestly be surprised if Solanke got at least a cameo next week. It was suggested that maybe he's out until after the international break, but you never know with injury news these days. I think if you can dodge a price rise of Solanke, he'd be worth hanging on to another week. All right, we've got a few more matches.
Target Everton, of course. Offensively and defensively. If you want to laugh, like read their BPS list. Because it's like McNeil at 22, Gonagai at 8, Lindstrom at 4, Armstrong. I don't even know if it's Adam Armstrong or Tim Armstrong from Rancid. I don't know. Harrison Armstrong. Okay.
None of the above.
He played for a minute. Awesome.
And he got into the top bonus.
With 4. and Duke with 3. That's
incredible.
Harrison Armstrong.
That might be the biggest takeaway from this weekend. Harrison Armstrong made it into the screenshot of BPS for Everton by playing 1 minute.
Did they pick him up on a free transfer from Phillips Exeter? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we've said a lot about Aston Villa and Arsenal. Morgan Rogers is like, he looks like he's under no threat of losing his spot because he was working so much of the attack for Aston Villa. He looked incredible. Watkins, if I could have found a way to turn Solanke into Watkins, I would, because I agree with your perspective is he's just kind of creaking into gear. Francis, our friend, wants to know Solanke to Watkins, but what's the 60 minutes sub for Watkins to Duran in back-to-back weeks? I mean, we kind of like talked through this, right? Like, we don't believe that this is just Emery working Watkins back to obvious fitness after not probably having a long enough vacation over the summer. But Watkins is a fitness king.
Yeah,
I think he'll
I
do
agree.
it. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that on top of that, it's, there are some questions with Aston Villa about how they're going to handle Champions League.
Yeah. The squad is looking already a little ragged with, a couple of guys like Cash went down with the hamstring. Leon Bailey was struggling, but he came back into it. And you just wonder, like, do they go full Newcastle of last season, have a few bad injuries, and suddenly they're struggling to be in the top 10?
Yeah. I mean, they got rid of Alex Moreno, who's going to Forest, which is another person to keep an eye on, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, once it gets to Champions League, it's going to get really dicey. But Rodgers is 5.0. I think that, you're safe with that because it's not much of a commitment financially. When it comes to Watkins, I do wonder if they're going to play Watkins in the league and they're going to play Duran in the more easy fixtures of the Champions League. But I think that, like, in this run that's coming, I mean, it looks really good right now. I mean, it looks just fantastic from this point forward of who they're going to play. So I know Watkins has had like 2 shots thus far, but it's Ollie Watkins. I think that he's
of them
class
produced
player.
The best save we're going to see all season from Raya again, to bring that up again. So like no shots at Watkins for that. On Arsenal, it is funny how quickly I went from, after Havertz's performance against your mob last week, I was like, Havertz is the only fantasy player I want. I want 11 Havertzes in my team and I will win FPL. To this week where I'm kind of like, well, yeah, Havertz is pretty good. I'd take him if you offered him to me. To Bukayo Saka is, I want 11 of these guys. Like, he, over the course of these 2 game weeks, looks so ready for it. And just want to underline it again. Like, Saka feels like more than Mo Salah to me. I wonder, is there a case to be made there? Do I sound like an idiot, Pat? Like, tell me, just between friends.
Yeah,
if I say Saka is more required than Salah right now.
I think Salah looks great, but I think that Saka plays to a particular level that Saka plus 2.5 is pretty equivalent to Salah, I think. Yeah. I mean, Salah's fantastic. If you have him, you hold him. Yes. He's worth it. He's a great he's sound as a captain. He's dependable. He fits really well in that Liverpool system. If you don't have him, you're not going to bend over backwards to get him, because there's Jota, there's Luis Diaz, who's been looking incredible. So I think that if you have Saka, like, it's relatively equivalent. And with Havertz, I think he had an off game, but I think that he's solid in that place, unless they transfer someone in, which is entirely possible. But I think that if you were somebody that went and you knee-jerked in Havertz after week 1, I think you'd be
happy with that still.
Going into the games coming up soon, I think that especially, look, going into the North London Derby and all these games like that, where there are opportunities for scoring, I think that he'll be in the middle of the action. So
the fixtures go supernova for Arsenal in game week 6 when they host Leicester. Then it's Southampton again at home, followed by Bournemouth. So 100%.
I would say that if you're looking for 3, you could do, Raya, obligatory defender, and Saka, or you can go defensive person, whoever it happens to be. Take your pick. Saka and Havertz. I think that's a really he's an option.
Hive mind has gotten to you now. I see what you're doing there. And lastly, thoughts and prayers to all of the Odegaard owners out there. I think you've got to cut your losses. At this point, he'll have his hauls, but there are finer FPL assets to have.
And the key with Odegaard is that he has his hauls when you don't have him in your team.
Yeah.
That's
so
the
just
magic
accept
that
that.
is
Accept
Odegaard.
That. Yeah. All right. On Newcastle and Bournemouth, we've got to answer this question who comes from Tom McLeod. Are we done with Isak now? Who's the next bandwagon? Now, Isak, is he a bust? He's got in 2 matches, 1 assist, but you're not losing the faith.
No, I don't. No. Because they play better at home. They play better at St. James. I think that if you and my intention would be like I've been really thinking, because I thought about going without Isak in the wild card that I did. But I think that them against Spurs at St. James, there's going to be some goals there, and he'll be in the mix there. Obviously, Romero's great for drawing penalties and handing them out. I'm not drawing them, but handing them out. So I think that you're solid with them for next week. I don't think that you should have any urge to take them out. If you want to do the move of Isak to Watkins, especially for the Leicester match, I wouldn't argue with it. If you want to do it for week 4, I definitely wouldn't argue against that sort of logic. But I think that just to kind of stamp him as being just like a dud, I don't think that's the case. I think that, they're a different team when they're playing at home. Yeah. And so, I would say he's a hold. If you want to move him to something better, and it's really part of your aims, like for a Watkins or something like that. Upgrades only. Yeah, I would say upgrades only. Because right.
Speaking of upgrades, when I first met you, the defining thing about who you were, other than you having a PhD, which you never shut up about, is Lewis Hall and your undying love of Lewis Hall. Where do we stand? This was back when in his Chelsea
other
days.
Content creators are good at bragging about having a PhD. Come on. Okay. You got me confused with other people.
Lewis Hall did not start this match against Bournemouth, which is a concern. I mean, Lewis Hall looked like he was going to be the other fullback opposite Livramento. Lloyd Kelly, maybe it was just like a grudge match for Lloyd Kelly going against his old club in Bournemouth, and he got the nod there. Lewis Hall comes on for like a 20-minute cameo. I mean, Lewis Hall, he's still. I don't think Lloyd Kelly did anything to say, well, it's my spot now over Hall. Does Hall make a great return next week?
Lloyd Kelly understands the nuances of the turf at the Vitality. That's what it was. He knew where
exactly.
The sprinkler
it's like
heads
the parquet court at Boston Garden, right?
Yeah, he knew where the sprinkler heads were, all that sort of thing. No, I listen. Lewis Hall has a lot of years ahead of him, and he is going to be the star that I think he is at some point. But Newcastle defense. I don't know. I don't know what Eddie is thinking. Eddie Howe is thinking. He is prone to shift things around. I don't know if Trippier is staying. If he's going to move out. There were points at the game that I just watched, where he just looked like all hope had been sunk out of him, and he was just looking forward to being in a new place. I would say Newcastle, I really don't know. They're Jekyll and Hyde. They're one team at home.
I'm with you on that.
When they're away from home, they're a completely different team. Bournemouth, I already mentioned it before. They have some great assets, and keep an eye on them. I think that they have some really great offensive assets, and I'm really looking forward to how Evan Nilsson locks into the team. I think that he could be another person that could be a really good pick at 6-0, especially once they get past this really rough opening to the season.
All right. We've got to talk about Chelsea a little bit more. A couple of questions here. Father Dugal wants to know, Nkuku to Madueke? ? Solanke to Nicholas Jackson? ? Both?
No.
Father Dugal already has Cole Palmer, so it's all in on Chelsea here. Sven Anders Skolt wants to know, Son to Palmer. Is that a side move? Or do Palmer's fixtures make it worth it? Chelsea's fixtures are still pretty remarkable. They've got Palace at the Bridge in game week 3, followed by Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, then Forest until they hit the freight train that is Liverpool at Anfield in game week 8. So do we make hay while the sun shines? I don't really know what to make of this performance against Wolves. I kind of want to blame Wolves, but there is a version of this that the history books will say in which this finally is when the Todd Boehly plan kind of comes together. Boehly has invested in all these new young players. Look at all these goal scorers, these young guys who are like fresh to the club. Maresca has like this reputation for playing a more attacking style of football coming from Leicester. Is it all suddenly working and we're going to miss out not having Jackson, Madueke? You're shaking your head.
I've never thought of Chelsea as a team for the longest time. I've only thought of them as a avenue for Todd Boehly to launder money. So it's kind of a new thing for me, thinking of Todd actually
theoretically. Well. We don't know if any of that's true or not, of course.
But so Madueke, the Budweiser King of the Game Week, he looked great. He looked, and I mean, 3 goals, just the 3 goals, like kind of belies that there were other instances, like even prior to the goals being scored. He looked dangerous, and he has looked very good on the pitch. He's looked like a top flight player. I mean, the question is that they have an endless supply of players. They have Todd Boehly, who needs to buy things like Joao Felix. For it.
Retail therapy.
Oh yeah, man. He is like that man. Just like sits and watches QVC and just buys things.
He's eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's and he's looking at sports cards, saying like, "Oh, I'll buy this one too."
Oh yeah. Well, some people do that, but
nobody on this podcast for sure.
Nobody totally doesn't.
Madueke looks fantastic, but what about Nkunku?
But I think Madueke, the question is he going to start regularly? That's just like, right. And that's the thing. That's
is it going to get spread around?
Exactly. I mean, they have, Joao Felix, they have all these other players, and it's just like, who is going to go into those spots? Nicholas Jackson, maybe I'm biased, but I just have too many bad memories of having Nicholas Jackson. Yeah. But I had too many bad memories of having Nicholas Jackson in my team last year, where I was, sunk down to the depths of 5 million.
Did you see the movie May December on Netflix starring who's the Princess Amidala? Who is that actress?
Natalie Portman.
And so there's this quote in May December where the whole premise is this young kid gets seduced by a school teacher when he's like really young. Mm-hmm. What if they grow up and like he's still married to a school teacher? So this kid, he's like 30 years old, but he has like a bunch of kids and they're all like 5 years younger than him. So he's like smoking weed with one of his sons on the roof, and he gets a little too high, and he's not used to it. And he just says, "I can't tell if we're connecting." This is what he says to his son, or if I'm creating a bad memory for you. And that's basically what Nicholas Jackson.
I would tread lightly on jumping into Nicholas Jackson.
We haven't mentioned Nkunku though. We've got to talk about him because the computer told us to do this, Pat.
Yeah,
look at us now.
I never had him, so
nor I. I won't catch any flack for that either. It's just unfortunate, really, and it's it's not that you're bad. Nkunku owner, you saw the potential. He's a great player.
Yeah.
But now it's like the fact that both Joao Felix and Neto got onto the pitch before Nkunku did, and then they produced goals and an assist. It's very worrying, and it's just not something you want to be party to as a fantasy manager, unfortunately.
I don't know what Maresca's thinking a lot of times. I really don't. I mean, it's just like he pulled Nkunku at 59 in game week 1, and it's just like he was the only player that on the offensive side that was really doing things. So I don't know. That's again, Maresca.
Yeah.
I don't know what his master plan is, or if he has one, or
Yeah.
if he knows what he's doing. But Cole Palmer, yes, I would say Cole Palmer is as advertised. He's a good pick. If you
Yeah.
want to go from Son to Cole Palmer, go for it. I would say that,
I like
especially
that.
especially with the fixtures that are coming up.
Yeah. All right. Last fixture we want to talk about is Liverpool v Brentford. Mbomo is somebody you picked up on your wild card. You mentioned that you would have loved to have seen something from him against Liverpool at Anfield, but you wouldn't expect it. So now becomes the real test for Mbomo, and there's still no signs of Ivan Toney at Brentford. So it looks like we're in the clear in terms of sort of Mbomo and Vissa having their say up front. So that feels good for them. And the only remaining question that we haven't talked through with Liverpool on this pod is really the Luis Diaz effect. And I think we knew this was going to happen game to game, where Luis Diaz was going to be the guy who took the points that maybe Jota or Salah would have had. And we've got to be comfortable with that. I just don't see a real argument for having Diaz over Jota, even in a week like this, because Jota simply plays more centrally. And even though he didn't finish on the thing is, Jota had the chances, he just didn't finish them. He could have easily matched Diaz for points and exceeded him again, like he did in game week 1. So, I mean, would you make any case for Diaz here?
No, I would. I mean, he looked great. I think that if you want to play a little bit rogue, and you don't want to spend money for Salah, and you want to get into Liverpool, and you have that slot, like, I would say Jota and Diaz would be a great 1-2. I think that he has been attacking the goal. I think that he's been sharp. He's been so sharp. Yeah. I think that he is really working well in Arne Slot's system. I again with Hackbo and what's his name?
Gravenberch?
Yes. No, Darwin Nunez, another fond player that I had so many great memories with last year, that I forgot his name. I think that I think that there's always that static that comes in of whether or not they're going to, come in, especially with Champions League and all that sort of stuff. But if you are confident, if you want to take a flyer, I would say that Luis Diaz and Jota, both 7.5. I mean, I think that's a really good sort of spot, especially if you're kind of have somebody that is in that space that you want to get rid of, or you want to move to somebody else. You could think of worse things to do than that.
Sure. All right, Pat, we got to finish things off with a little bit of a lightning round, some more general interest questions, shall we call them. But sometimes these are the most important things. They kind of play into the idea of making fantasy fun, again, which is always the ethos of always cheating. And James P., he says, how do I recover from what is likely my worst FPL start in a decade, where all of my picks were just wrong? So this is a question that comes up often.
I have to go 1 second.
Oh yeah. Pat's got to run off screen, and which means I am left to put the always cheating ethos right in front of you. And James, you know me, I know you. You've got to pick yourself up and carry on. For you to have the best or the worst start in over a decade is a real pain, but there's no better point to have a bad moment than at the very start of the season, because you have wild cards to work with. You have many different outs to put yourself back on the right track. If you look at your mini league tables, maybe you're behind by like 40 points. 40 points is a bad gap to have when you're going into game week 30, or I guess maybe even 34, that late. To have a 40-point, 50-point gap now is not that big of a concern. So I think the advice out there, if you just started miserably, if you're having FOMO and it didn't quite work out, you've got to just pick yourself up and keep going. I have just, Pat, given the most motivational speech to fantasy managers I can possibly imagine. Do you think there's something to the idea of it's not necessarily you've had a bad start to the season, it's just that you're suffering FOMO. You have the fear of missing out on certain fun players that you want in your team.
So here's my thing. It's like the past 2 seasons at the beginning of the year, I've done terribly. Like, there was one season I did just super duper duper well. And then the next season I was like at about 800,000 after the midpoint, like shortly after the midpoint. And I bounced back up to like 30,000. Last year I was at 5 million with 10 game weeks to go. And I, recovered and got into the 6 figures, right?
Yeah.
Those things can be fixed, especially 2 weeks into the season. It didn't work out for those 2 weeks. I mean, we all have those weeks where we are in the $5 or 6 million rank for the week. Sure. I would say, like, if you feel like you have good players, stick with them.
Totally.
Right? They could come well. You have Eze, you have other folks. Like, don't worry. You always have that wild card too, because the second wild card that you have at the second half of the season is strategic. That's the strategic wild card that you pull because you want to position yourself. You have a sort of idea in place. That first one is the get out of jail free card. Do not feel bad about pulling that one.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Just do it
in game week 3, especially because you can bank transfers, right?
Yes,
so it's just like, it's not a thing where okay, I did it in game week 3. I'm going to be in a position where I'm just really bad.
You can make your own wild card if you're just frugal for the next couple of game weeks,
or if you like to take hits.
Totally. Yes. Which gets us to our final question from Get on the end of it. Who asks, with all the price changes around, is it reasonable to take a -8, or is it better to hold your nerve? So we've talked a little bit about some price changes, like the Kwanzaa dropping in price, our friend Voutface going up in price. Now is when managers' nerve is really tested, because sometimes you'll hear that 0.1 doesn't really make a difference, but sometimes it does. Are you a hits taker? Transfer hits? Do you feel like, particularly if you're in James P's situation where you have a terrible start, can you rip? It was a version of ripping the wild card or ripping off the Band-Aid, just taking some transfer hits and righting the ship.
I think one of the things is that there's a misconception that doing the wild card means you have to change every player on your team, right?
Yeah,
you could change 5, you could change 6, like you can improve. Like that first wild card is just something that's like, it's a corrective measure, or it's something that if you want to put some polish on your team, you can do that. So I would say that, like, don't feel opposed to ripping that wild card early if you have to. I mean, people say, "Oh, we have to do this at this international blah 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 blah." No, don't be strategic about the first wild card. With that said, I'm a big advocate for taking hits. I really am. I've taken one season where I did, I typically take like 10, 12, 15 hits during a season. Like I do. And one of the things is that you just have to think where it's like, yes, taking that -4 sucks for that week, right? But if you feel like the difference between the players that you're taking out versus the players that you're bringing in is worth it over a 4, 5, 6 game week horizon, it's worth it, right? So if you want to take a -4 to get in a really good player, especially if you have, if you want to move heavy in one position to another position, say you want to get, you went super cheap in the back and it's just like, oh, I really want to get TAA, but I have to move, this other player, other player in the midfield or in my forward line to do that sort of thing. Do it. Like, I think that's worth it when you take those hits. I think that one of the things that's not good about taking hits, especially at this early point of the season, is that we don't know. There's so much we don't know. And we can't necessarily project, whether in a FPL review way or a just mental, sort of grass FC way. because we can both kind of project in those sorts of manners. If we can't necessarily get a really good, faithful sense of what is going to happen with such little information, because you have transfers coming in, you have Champions League starting up, all those sorts of things like that. So it's really difficult for you to get, somebody might get hurt during, a national break. You have no idea. So, I'd say early on in the season, it's tougher to really get a sense of what to do if you're ripping a -8. But if you're in the middle of the season and say it's game week 17, right, or it's right before you're going over to that midpoint where the new wild card is coming in, the mystery chip makes its appearance, right, and you sense like, okay, I'm in kind of a bad way, and I need to move. I have one transfer, but I need to move 3 players. Yep. Like if those 3 players being moved can allow you to get above -8 points over the course of 5 weeks or 3 weeks or what have you, or even 2 weeks, like do it. I think that just so early on in the season, we just don't know enough to make those projections effectively. Whether you use analytics, statistical analytics, or you use just sort of mental sort of senses of the game.
The doctor is in. Dr. PP Poo Poo is speaking truth. I was just looking. That's just becoming my nickname now. Yeah, no, it is. It literally is. I was just looking at your previous seasons. In the 2021-2022 season, you finished 230 overall in the world. Incredible. If you don't trust the Dr. PP Poo Poo, I implore you to go look at his FPL history. It's fantastic.
And you can see that 800,000 from last year, but now since I'm officially a content creator now, I can just tell people I had a 230.
You got hacked.
Finish.
You just tell people your team got hacked, and then it's fine. You got to get that dual factor, buddy. Pat, it has been a blast having you on the Always Cheating podcast. We will definitely have to do this again. So fun talking to you. Give me your prediction on where Wolves finish in the table this season.
I said 22nd. Honestly, I would say there's a very good chance to get relegated. Honestly,
okay.
I really
That's
do.
Tough stuff.
And,
tough stuff for our man Gary O'Neill.
Them's the breaks.
Yeah.
But Gary O'Neill, he's a really good manager, and he'll come out.
He will bounce back.
That. Wolves will survive.
Yeah. So. Any last words for the Always Cheating community before we sign off, Pat?
Have fun. I think it's just having fun. I think that this game is
absolutely
becomes so orthodox in you make this move at this time and you make this move at this time. It's like this is a game. You play it. You play it on your phone while you're sitting on the toilet. This is come on.
It all comes back to the scatological with you, Doctor. I get it. All right, I'm going to put you to work, and I'm going to ask you to read the producer names. Do you have the producer names in front of you?
I don't.
Okay.
Actually, because it's on my phone and my phone just died.
All right, you blew it. I'm gonna have to do it for you, but it doesn't diminish your appearance all the same.
Shout outs to Babas Kuhn. That's my favorite.
Babas Kuhn is your boy. All right.
Yeah.
If you want to get on the producer list or support us at any tier that makes sense for you, and say thanks for what we do on Always Cheating and get that extra podcast each week, access to our Discord, and so much else, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Of course, we thank our producers every week, and that's Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wagner, Lodall, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, that man Babas Kuhn, Ron Frost, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, as he does it, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tislov, Fred Jacobson, The Saint, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rashi, Nigam, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rune Sandberg, the 3 Jims. That's James Murray Wood, James C., and James Holland. Again, another shout out to James Holland, Ipswich supporter. We had so much fun chatting to him this week. And Jack, of course. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media wherever you get that. For all that information, visit our website, alwayscheating.com. Pat, grab my hand, hold on tight as we dive into game week 3.
Hey, Pat, it's all about showing the attitude of gratitude.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death, but you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.